Hello, I am Dante, and Joe was a pretty big part of my life in my early 20s. I actually met him in college while I was dressed in a costume, running down his dorm room hallway, throwing food at him. Later on, unbeknownst to me, he would be at my aunt's church, and I was soon attending there. Joe is one of the few people in my life, and Justin, who I lived with. It was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years that I lived with him. And Joe had a lot of mannerisms. And I remember when he would find something you were saying interesting, or maybe that he agreed with, he would kind of nod, and one of his eyes would kind of go up more, like, or maybe his head, like he would kind of do this interested type of nod. And then if he didn't understand what you were saying or didn't agree with what you were saying, it would be a pronounced difference in that nonverbal language, like a Joe is a very logical person, a very reason-oriented person. To me, he was somebody that could sense. He had a radar for contradiction, or a radar for hypocrisy, or just a radar for stupidity, and general. But I remember these times when he would kind of get carefree, and he would kind of like, I would propose something difficult to him, like, or something that happened, and then sometimes on the fly, he would do this face. He would be like that, and then like laugh or not laugh afterwards. And it was hilarious because Justin and I were very similar in the house, being almost seemingly, I don't want to speak for Justin, but maybe I could speak for Joe, that we were both kind of seemingly irresponsible a little bit in the household. And Joe was much more responsible. I remember vividly Justin and I blowing off illegal fireworks on Joe's wooden deck, and Justin and I thinking that that was a good idea. I have no idea why I thought that was a good idea, but all I remember is Joe vehemently did not find that to be a good idea. I also remember a time hearing Joe yelling at Justin in the house, saying, "Justin, why would you think it's a good idea to put a dead mouse in the kitchen trash can?" I remember there were these nights, because our bedrooms were on the same floor, and Joe kind of had the master bedroom at the end of the hallway. And I remember these nights where I would just kind of walk out of my bedroom or walk up the steps and kind of join in on a brother conversation between Joe and Justin. And it could be about girls, it could be about anything. Just being in our early 20s, life, God, anything. I remember telling Joe that I spent all my savings on DJ equipment to be a DJ, and he thought it was a good idea. He was like, "That's awesome." There was this mutual encouragement at that time in our early 20s with kind of spending money on projects. Joe and I were very involved in things within the church, so like it was like we were constantly together, but like doing these things. I drove him around so much. We did so many things for the church together. Yeah, we were involved in the music and in the youth and the college and career, all this kind of stuff. But I don't really remember all the millions of things that we did. But the memories that really stick out to me were the times we did things that weren't involved in some kind of church work or service, or just the times Joe and I did stuff that was like off the cuff. One of my favorite memories, and it was all too rare, but was one time on a weekend, I think I might have said, "Hey Joe, you want to go to the Montgomeryville Mall? Do you just want to go to the mall and like maybe like find girls that we could talk to or something?" And I remember I was like in shock that he was like, "Okay, let's go." And there was this jovial, fun, careless, flying by the seat of our pants vibe that was happening on that night. I think it was like a Saturday night. And I remember walking around the mall and just kind of telling Joe about like any of the girls that I saw. Another time that he was in my car with my friend Eric and hanging out, just whatever. And I remember there was a parade and I somehow snuck my car, my van, into the parade as if we were part of the parade. And I kept circling with the parade. And we were laughing hysterically until I think the cops eventually caught on and said, like, they came up next to my car and were like, "Get out of here right now." But Joe, upon like the third or fourth or fifth circle with the parade, was kind of like, "All right, guys, I think we have to get out of here." I think this is too much. But now here's another driving story that we did not get angry at each other while we were driving. We were supposed to go somewhere and we got totally lost. I'm driving, so we got like 2 hours out of the way. Like we were in Japitsville. We were in the middle of nowhere. And there was a wedding outside. We were completely lost, and I was like, "Joe, there's a wedding out here." And we were laughing hysterically, and I think parked my car and just watched the wedding and described it to Joe while we were laughing. The weather was really nice. It was like maybe like spring or fall. That was an amazing memory. That was a really, really good memory. I remember when my first engagement broke up, and I ran to his house when he was living with his dad. And he opened the front door, and I barely got the words out that my engagement broke, and I was crying. And I remember he just hugged me, like brought me into the house and hugged me. And undoubtedly at some point then we just would process the whole thing and maybe like just process it and talk about negative stuff. That's one thing with Joe too that was really cool, is that you could process stuff with him. And he thought I was crazy, I think, a lot of the time. And we were very different. And I know that I got on his nerves sometimes, but I also know that we were very similar in things. There was a camaraderie that we had that at times could have almost seemed like a freak show. Like people would say, "You're an unlikely pair." I remember making the spiciest chili in the world for him. I would dump so much pepper in there because he like lost most of his sense of taste and stuff. So he was like, "I love your chili. Your chili tastes great," because I made it so ridiculously spicy. And I was like terrified he was gonna like throw up, but his stomach was like cast iron. I was the one who was sick all the time with my stomach. He never got sick. Even if a stomach virus was going around, he didn't get sick. Joe was somebody who I know was frustrated a lot. Rightfully so. I remember him being kind of exasperated and exhausted and wanting to have more energy to do things that he was really passionate about. but feeling like he didn't have the energy, maybe after work. I'm trying to remember. I remember mood changes and times when I was, even Justin and I would be walking on eggshells, kind of. And I remember his definite compassion when there was a time of pain. When there was pain, you could count on Joe to be there. When there was confusion, unanswered questions, things that didn't make sense, people that screwed you over, you could count on Joe to be there. And Joe was a definite good listener. Obviously. Somebody whose ears needed to be in the forefront. I have this memory of Joe and Justin when they would sit next to each other. Sometimes they would sit like really close to each other on the couch. And Justin would be like murmuring things and like poking Joe. Like murmuring things in his ear and like poking him. And like they would be murmuring things back and forth to each other, almost like if it was like, understand what I mean here. It was almost like if like there was a dating couple who was like kind of flirting or having a good time, but they had this camaraderie as brothers. It was almost like Justin was like kind of like annoying or prodding Joe, and then like Joe loved it. Like Joe loved that with his brother. Lots of memories came flooding back to me once I heard of Joe's death. And I think the last time I saw Joe was shortly after he married Marcia. Something like that. And I was somewhere around there. And he did meet my wife. And those are some of the memories that have come to me about Joe.